rules of the game are such that they are not responsive to women. And until and unless we have enough women inside, through special quotas, we cannot begin to change the rules of the game. That's my belief. And I said one of the things that we need to do, of course, is put women on the front line of law enforcement. For the longest time, at least in my country, it was very rare to see a woman police officer. That is changing. And of course, because we all, once you are in the space, then you begin to see the problems from your own perspective. So until and unless we have enough women within the police force, within law enforcement, then the questions or the special concerns of women will not be addressed. We need to train judges and monitor the decisions. And why train judges? Many judges, at least in my country, walked off a law campus a long time ago. They do the same thing over and over again, and unless and until they get retrained or reoriented to realize that what may have been justice 1,000 years ago is not justice today, then they'll continue to do the same things that they did a long time ago. We need to increase women's access to the courts. And how do you do that? Or why is there a problem? If you look at my country, for example, sometimes it's really small things, really, really, really small things. If you start, even just something as basic as this, which there's a friend of mine who's a judge, I argue about him all the time. He starts at 7:30 in the morning. And I said, that is so unreasonable, for litigants who are, without means, who, the court is in Botswana, the country is the size of France. If somebody's going to be in front of your court at 7:30, where do they spend the night in that small town? I mean, if they don't have the car even to come to court, how do you expect them to be in your court at 7:30 in the morning? It's small things. Language as a barrier to access to justice. Money as a barrier to access to justice. So those are some of the things that we have to address. Gender-responsive reparation. Often, I'm reminded of a case when I speak about this, of a young girl. I write about her in one of my books. She came to me. Actually, her dad had come to me, tears running down his face. Her 16-year-old girl is pregnant, didn't even see it coming. And so what does she want? What does he want? Of course, he wants the prosecution of the perpetrator because it's statutory rape. She was under 16 when she became pregnant, and he wants to make sure that he goes to jail, for what he's done. This 15-year-old is telling me, that is justice for him and my mother. But is that justice for me? I don't want to be taking this child. It was a very, very bright 15-year-old. She said, look, I take responsibility for my actions. I don't know whether 50-year-olds can do that. And I say that he was 21 years old, he's much older than I am, I accept that. But I will not accept a justice system that says that when this child starts school, in 5 years' time, she asked me, what is your dad? I say, he's in jail for making you. Therefore, I want a different kind of justice. I want him to pay child support. I want him to make sure that the 1 year that I was out of school, and I'm delayed out of school, he pays for that. But I don't want a justice system that punishes him in a way that punishes me in turn and that punishes my child. Again, that may not be necessarily our idea of justice, but it's a justice that is responsive to her. But so are we listening to women to say, what is justice for me? Or are we just restating what we've known to expect to be justice in the past? The MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals. I think we also need to put at the heart of the Millennium Development Goals justice and equity for women and girls. We cannot talk about eradicating poverty if we don't realize that poverty is going to gender face. We cannot talk about HIV/AIDS unless we realize the extent to which it affects women and differently from men. So at the end of the day, justice for women in the developing world is about realizing that women live within the context of a culture, and that women want to be part of their culture. They love their culture. And that it is a great, great strain for them to challenge their culture and still claim their individuality. And that in addressing the issues that affect women and girls in the developing world, you cannot look at the event without looking at the process. You cannot, you will not succeed if you don't look beyond just that particular event and look at the whole context. Because women and girls, they exist in families and they love their families. Women and girls exist within communities and they love their communities. But they just need to know, to have the strength to challenge their families, to challenge their communities, but in a way that they don't deny themselves. And I think for me, that is the hardest part, really, of our struggle, is how do you remain true to yourself and still question yourself? And of course, when women do that, you are against our culture, you are foreign, it's because you are foreign educated, it's because of those Americans, it's because of those NGOs, those are that's thrown at you. So how do we strengthen girls and boys to make sure that they realize they can have the same dreams, and they can dream big dreams, and that they can attain whatever is possible without, regardless of their gender? And I think that's where education comes from. Education, 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 education. When you are educated, when you have attained formal education, then you have the strength to challenge. And therefore, of course, the backup in case those who challenge, are stronger than you, to make sure that you can support yourself. And I think the greatest reason, or one of the most important reasons why women have attained what they have attained in developed countries is education. That at a very personal level, they can be autonomous. And when you are autonomous, when you have the financial means to actually claim your voice, then you can talk to others on an eye level, as opposed to hoping that this marriage will work, because if there's no marriage, then of course you're going to starve. If you don't starve, your children will starve. And if at the end of the day, I say education, 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 and culture cannot be used as a cloak to ward off criticism. But culture is important to understanding what's inside that cloak. And with those few words, thank you very much. I'm going to stop here. Thank you.
I'm tired. Okay. But I'm saying, yeah, I'm tired. No, thank you. This is for you. Judge Dow, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Judge Dow has agreed to take a few questions. She's very tired from all the events she's been doing over the last 2 days, but she will take a few questions. There's a mic on this side, there's a mic on the other side, and if anybody would like to ask a question, would ask you to come to the mic. You can line up and ask your questions. Please keep them brief so that anybody who wants to ask a question has the opportunity. Please.
Yeah, hello. My name is Kamar Bashir. I'm from Somalia, and I drive 45 miles from Lewiston to come to listen to you, Judge Dow. My question is, you mentioned about, the brief introduction, they talked about the Bushmen of Botswana, where they want to keep their land so that some people they need to respect them. We have a problem with many Africans in the community here, especially when we go to the court, when we have our culture, how we treat our kids, how we punish them, and it seems that maybe we are unfit mothers or we are unfit parents. So how can we address that issue within the court system in this country? And the other thing you mentioned about many Aishas, Aishas in different kind of world. Do you think that in America, do we have some Aishas also? Because we have this glass ceiling which a lot of women in America cannot penetrate also.
Okay. Thank you very much for those two questions. The first was about how you punish your children. in a community that says that you may not hit children. Is that correct? The spanking of children is an issue all over the world. Should it be spank or should it be spank? I have to say, let me tell you a personal experience. Okay, I've never hit my kids. I hit her once on her lap. She still remembers. I swear she was 2. But she sometimes says, "You hit me once," she says. I don't believe so. I think I just tapped her. But at the end of the day, I do not believe that. I know that it is practiced almost all over the world, but I can tell you that when you use violence on anybody, you're teaching them to use violence later on somebody else. Are there any Aishas in the United States? I'm sure there's, an Aisha there who's wondering. They tell me that there's a great democracy. They tell me, that there's equality. They tell me this is, the beacon of democracy. How come I don't feel it? How come I'm not, I have those dreams, but I don't see attaining them. So, of course, there are Aishas in the United States of America as well. And I think the message of the story is that look around and, that it is possible, but it's hard. And the obstacles or hurdles for women they're everywhere, including the United States, especially for immigrant populations, because now you have a double layer. You come with your culture, which is already closing you within, and now you have to now deal with another culture, and that is bigger than you. And people are, they're too embarrassed even to ask you simple questions. I'm really about your own culture. So this division continues. You live together, but don't really live together. So then you have even a double restraint or double problem.
Coming. Thanks for getting here, Kathy, and everyone else. My question, you talked about grandmothers, and you talked about education, education, education. Could you talk about your grandmother and how we might clone her to become the educator, how to clone her so she can become how we outside can support your grandmothers like you had to then educate the other grandmothers about telling their granddaughters to, you go, girl.
Okay, yeah, I use the symbolism of the grandmother. Let me talk about my mother, because in terms of the lessons that I think I learned, she was more powerful than my grandma. My grandma was great, for other reasons as well. But in terms of the lessons that I learned, the strength that I feel that I have, I got from my mother. She gave me. I can share with you 2 main lessons that she shared with us growing up. One of them was really about sharing. I mean, she said this, and it is very true because she's one of the wisest women I know. She said to me, Unity, because we are poor growing up, but we had even poorer neighbors next door, if that was possible. And she said, if Linky, that was my next door neighbor, loans you a needle so you can hem your dress, which is your hem is hanging, and you loan her an iron so that she can iron her dress. The iron is a more expensive tool than the needle. Which of those 2 presents or items is more valuable? Which of those 2 gestures is valuable? And 2 days later, she told me they're equally valuable, because at the end of the day, it is not what you do, it is not what you use, it is the result that is important. So if you walk around with your hem hanging, or you walk around with a creased dress, you just as, untidy as, both of you are just equally untidy. And therefore, when you deal with people, don't ask about how expensive the things that give you or exchange with you, or don't ask about how important is anything looks, but ask about the result. what is the result of what you're doing? Whether it's an action, whether it's a talk, what is the result? Are you building or she also asked the question, are you building or are you destroying? When you open your mouth, when you do anything else, ask yourself always, are you building or are you destroying? And if you're destroying, why would you want to destroy? So that's one of the lessons, the 2 lessons my mother told me also.
Tell them the story about the rug and the chair.
Okay. But another actually important message she used to tell us also, she was talking about education, talking about education specifically. She likes to say that not everybody who's been to school is educated. And she would say, you say he's educated, are you sure he's educated or he's been to school? There's a difference. So it's always, she's been to, I think, 2 years of primary school, herself. But she really is a believer that this education is the values that you come up with, from any interaction as opposed to being in a classroom. And again, that's a value that I think I value very much from my mother. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'll do that later. Yeah.
Dumelang amait. Ke lebaka ho boleha today. It's just very amazing and very exciting to have somebody who has made us very proud. At least for me, I would say that because I'm from Botswana, and for me to hear that she was coming over, I was very exuberant. I was telling my kids, hoping that they would come with me. One of the reasons being that one of my oldest is 14. When she passed the bill or the law that the kids that were born abroad cannot have either dual citizenship or whatever it is, it burdened us so much because we happened to have gone back to Botswana and we were sent back because my daughter was not. She was not, her visa had expired for 3 months or whatever that was. So they told her we were crossing over to South Africa. And they told us that, well, you know what, your daughter is supposed to be going back and if you don't come back and go back to the States, we're gonna end up putting you and the kid in prison or in jail, so to say. So, when she passed the bill and she fought this for a while, you have no idea because that's the reason why we ended up being in the States because I had to give up everything that I had just for my kids, just so they can have a better everything. Not that I don't love my country, I really adore and very excited. And just to see people like her, my daughter wanted to come and see you and she couldn't because she has a lot of homework.
Education.
Correct. But it's such people like you that give us privilege, to come in the state like Maine that is very diverse. And I happen to live next to an Afghani couple, and once in a while they bring food. They knock and bring food in my doorway, and they say, "Well, here we made some dinner." And it reminds me of back home because that's how we do. Your neighbor is really, they get to be neighborly. Neighborly, they share everything and they'll bring food, it's uncovered, and they have this long bread and they're handling it, it's not covered. I'm like, wow. But, just being very appreciative and seeing the neighborly and all this diverse Maine state, it makes me very proud, just so to say. You guys have no idea how people like Ms. Doe are making an impact in the world. Because first off, I'm very proud of that. At least now I have to go back to my country and I'm not afraid of anything anymore because I know that somebody made a change, made a difference. And I pray that a lot of young women would probably do the same and look up to her, and I'm very thankful.
Thank you.
First of all, I'm honored to be in the same room with you. My question is about mindset. There had to be a change of mindset in this country for blacks, for women, and for gays to get any equality and any rights. That battle hasn't been won yet. The one question I have for you is, what's the one thing that we can walk out of here today with that we can do to change the mindset of men throughout the world so women can have more equality and have more rights. The one thing at the top of the list that ordinary people can do. Thank you.
That's a tough one. What is the one thing that you could do to change at least the mindset of one person? You know, maybe not, you know. There are many things you could do. I mean, if we've got children, you actually talk about it. So I think we assume too much. We assume that kids do learn at school. We assume, just bring the discussion about, you know, boys and girls, you know, and the issue of dignity, the issue of that the son can go as far as the daughter, and, you know, vice versa. And because often we don't talk about it enough, we don't talk about it at all.